So I told you that Whit advises CIOs and all those C people about how to use their technology budget more effectively, how to use technology itself more effectively. He, in addition to being coached on the job training to give better presentations at the conferences that Gartner puts on, I understand he has gotten some training in improv comedy. He has been a winning speaker, at least on the local level, in storytelling competitions in his community. And Whit, as the British say, does what's on the tin. Whit is a witty guy, and you're going to enjoy him. Whit, the stage is yours.
That's very kind of you.
I will show you green, yellow, and red lights towards the end, and also there'll be a countdown clock running somewhere on the screen. It tells, so we'll get beamed back to the main room after 30 minutes.
All right, that's wonderful.
26 minutes now.
Terrific. How's the audio sound, Dave? Am I fairly clear?
Yep, very good.
Wonderful news. Okay. Dave, I pasted a link into the chat, and it appears to have gone to the general room chat. So if there's a smaller room chat, or if it's okay that
if you paste it again now, it'll come to this room's chat.
All right, that's exciting. Believe it or not, y'all, we don't actually. No, I think it went to the general again. Doesn't matter. It's in the chat, and Dave, if you want to recapture it and put it into this breakout rooms chat, we don't actually use Zoom that much at my company, believe that or not. I use it occasionally with clients, but for the most part, I find myself either in WebEx or in Teams. Life is like this. It ain't nothing simple. So I'm going to share now my presentation. I have a story. I mean, my story that I have to tell is, and by the way, are you seeing my 7 TV shows we're all on now? Great. Thank you. I appreciate it. You're coming through for me, Graham. Those thumbs are very gracious of you. I appreciate it. I see them right away. So we all have a story about what happened during the beginning of the pandemic. I'll tell you what I was doing, one of my most important duties at my company at that point. I was the chairman of what was then the United States Symposium, Symposium IT Expo. Dave and I have met there in the past, at least twice, I think. And it's a really big deal. We do it every year at Disney. I had been to that event every year that I had been at Gartner. So at that point, I think that was 19 or 20 times in a row. That's a strong accomplishment for us. And I was very proud of myself. Getting to be chair had been so wonderful in 2019. You get to walk around and, you strut, right? I mean, you're the chair. Now, keep in mind, you all know what that really means, right? I'm responsible for some stuff, accountable for very little, but I get the opportunity to work with the people that we sell sponsorships to, and I get to talk to the clients who choose to come, the prospects who aren't clients yet. I get to work with my colleagues, and it's really exciting. 2020 came around, and you can do the math, right? There was no way we were going to Florida in the fall of 2020 to do our big conference, and that was very challenging. I found suddenly that I was in a role that seemed a lot like being a television producer. And that was not what I expected, right? I mean, I expected to continue to be an impresario. I expected to need to buy a new suit. The year before, I had introduced Colin Powell and had met him backstage. The late Mr. Powell, General Powell, Secretary Powell, the late Mr. Powell, shared with me his feelings about Hillary Clinton and her email. It was an extraordinary experience. And then now I actually was in a completely different role. Being there in person was no longer a possibility. So I realized suddenly that I was now on television in ways I'd never been before. The first kind of show that we did was what I realized was a conversation for messaging and selling change. And this looked a lot like a QVC show. or a PBS pledge show, right? I realized that I was talking to people in front of a camera in order for them to talk to me through their camera, because of course none of us were in the same place, right? I was already in this wonderful little under the eaves room that I have in Holyoke, Massachusetts. What was key about this show was that it was essentially selling a new way of thinking. I was talking to my colleagues in front of other people. So I would talk to this colleague in front of other colleagues. I talked to this colleague in front of potential sponsors, talk to this colleague in front of potential salespeople. It was an interview process. I was in this interview process where I was trying to use conversation as a way to drive credibility and authority. It was a really different experience. Now, you can use this to deliver a message collectively. It's organic. It makes you feel more human. One of the things you have to be careful about is it can't be too scripted. It can be expensive if you have high production value. I'll give you a spoiler. We did not have high production value. We were just talking the best we could, right? So that drove credibility, and that was great. Now, when would you use this? I know that, for a lot of us, this idea of speaking is that it's always me talking to people in the audience. But I'm a big believer in the fact that when you bring people into conversation, you actually drive a sense of credibility and a sense of depth that it's hard to get at otherwise. So I recommend that you use this model, that you turn to conversation when you're trying to create a sense that the people can be trusted, and where you're trying to sort of elicit a kind of novelty and a new kind of perspective. But I also found myself doing what I refer to as big executive parent style message time. We were all doing this, right? It was kind of like a Jim Gaffigan stand-up special. You have to be sympathetic, but you can't be filthy. You can't be mean. You can't pick on other people. You really are driving a message, more of stability, and that you are a trustworthy individual, and that you as an authority are someone that the audience can believe in. This makes a big difference. And when I covered video content management for Gartner, so we cover technologies. It's what we do. We explain technologies, as Dave told you, to large organizations, middle-sized organizations, a very few small organizations. A lot of them are software vendors. And I originated our video content management coverage. What I discovered was that video was useful for two things. You could use it to resolve visual complexity. I'm sure all of you have watched something on YouTube in order to learn how to do something. Or you can use it to deliver emotional impact. And that's what we do with this Jim Gaffigan stand-up special type experience. We want people to believe us and to believe in us. And they think when they see us talking, and when we link that to the visual complexity of challenging data sets, then we're delivering something that's very powerful. The challenge here is that, again, you can't overscript. I'm speaking to you today with no script. So I have these slides, and I'll use that, and I'm telling a story that I'm familiar with. But when I'm reading from something, people don't believe you. And we ran into that as a challenge for our analysts who are very confident speaking to hundreds or even thousands of people in a room, but who found it hard to speak to a camera. And one of the things that clients were very clear with us about was that they wanted to feel like it was organic, even if they knew that it wasn't. That was part of their experience of our credibility. There are other challenges that come with this. Collective viewing, when you have a lot of people watching somebody on tape, that can be a problem. There's some great benefits. One person speaking, you can really bump up your production value. You should be using this when the audience is receptive to a message with emotional depth and spirit. Bless y'all's hearts for being in this room. I know you're paying attention to me because you came to the room. Right? You're in the room. You don't mind that I am talking to you like this. It's different when you're mandated to watch a thing, right? Then you can kind of find yourself speaking in a silent dialogue with the speaker and in an argument. So I'm going to mention that I'll come back to a slight variation on this, and that we do have a form in the chat, and I would love it if you could fill that out. If you can fill that out, it'll tell a story farther down in the conversation that I think you'll find interesting. So I was often speaking to my colleagues in this way, giving them this big executive style message. Then once I'd gotten across this message to them, it becomes important to begin to bring them into the conversation. A workshop is a great way to bring people into a conversation. And I think of this as a networking workshop, or, and we were just in this, a list of things to do between breakout rooms. So life is sometimes a list of things to do between breakout rooms. Now, the TV show that this is like is The School of Chocolate. It's on Netflix. And if you haven't seen it, here's what's cool about The School of Chocolate. It's an instructional survival show. So in other words, people get on the show and they are experts in what they're doing, which is making cool food out of chocolate. What's interesting about it, what makes it stand out, its differentiator, is that nobody gets kicked off. There's a score, but all 8 people who start the show finish the show. Now that's really interesting, because as people drop down in the rankings, as they realize that they're not going to win, they establish alliances and they improve their sort of their mien, so that they come across to the audience in a positive way. And you can imagine that if they're who they are basically interviewing. Even if they're entrepreneurs, they're interviewing for future funding by demonstrating their mastery and their willingness to adapt. So that's where you want to bring people into a workshop. So in a workshop, everybody's going to be there at the end of the workshop who gets there at the start. You're not going to get to vote anybody off. It can be challenging when the workshop is too big. AFKs can really botch up a breakout room. AFK means away from the keyboard. So we just saw Dave have to deal with that. He did a masterful job. He recognized that people have a reason to be away from the keyboard. That's not a problem. That's just part of their experience here today. He didn't demonstrate any hurt or emotional challenge or expose anybody in the room to that sense of something having gone wrong. It was just, hey, we understand this is the way meetings are now. So you have to make that transition. I recommend using this when you need to get work done. I used it with my colleagues to help them understand the theme of the experience, of the event. So I brought them into workshops so that they could craft their presentations in a way that aligned to the theme in general. And this led us to the workshops that we did at the event, and we did separately from the event as well. Happier workshops that are more one way. So think of this as being like the Barefoot Contessa, right? You turn on your TV show, you're watching a workshop, which may or may not even be live. My colleague, Heather Colella, who does our one-page strategy, does a masterful workshop on how to create a strategy that is only 1 page long. The clients who are talking to her are often talking to the kinds of C-level people that Dave pointed out I frequently talk to. And those C-level people only want to read 1 page. So Heather Colella's workshop, great way to learn how to do it. Here's what's interesting. When you do this kind of workshop and interaction is not part of the experience, it's okay for it to be played anytime. You can rewind your way back through the hard parts. You can section out and segment the parts that you need to understand the best. Again, you've all done this kind of thing. This is a staple on YouTube, right? This is the beauty experience where you learn how to make those eyes that look like they're on, I forget, smoky eye. You can learn how to do smoky eye on a YouTube video. You can back it up over the hard parts. I learned how to run Minecraft servers using YouTube videos this way. So this is an important television show model, the idea is less emotional and more the resolution of visual complexity. Remember how I said video is great at emotional impact and it's great at the resolution of visual complexity. In most workshops like this, you're having some emotional impact. But the key is that you're helping people understand something that's visually hard to grasp. It might be a physical activity. Julia Child show you how to make a croissant. She might show you how to make a croissant. I will never make a croissant as long as I live. But as I say, I have learned how to do all kinds of things on YouTube. Just recently, I learned how to saute something on YouTube. I find it very challenging to cook. I like to have instructions provided to me. In our case at Gartner, we're often explaining technologies. We're explaining how systems work. And you all know that you've been doing this with PowerPoint all this time. I strongly recommend this when you're trying to resolve a visually complex issue, when collective experience is not important, when individual understanding is what you're trying to drive. We're 4 TV shows through the 7 that I promised you. This is where things get really hard. A crowdsourced roundtable is a key part of our experience at Symposium. People come to Symposium, even when it was virtual, because they wanted to meet people. And that's one of the big reasons that you all are in this room right now. Now, this is not a roundtable. This is like the television show Soul Train. Now, bear with me here. I realize that that may not seem that way. But you remember what Soul Train was? Soul Train, one of the last great American dance shows. There were 4 or 5 that were successful at a national level. People would come to the studio, demonstrate their dance capability, and then be allowed onto the show. What this meant was you were selecting people, whether you wanted to or not, who were going to interact with each other in a way that was both entertaining and perhaps a little bit instructional. I think Soul Train was probably more focused on entertainment, less focused on instruction, but maybe you were somebody who was able to take away a dance move from Soul Train and apply it for yourself later. If so, I'm impressed. This is a challenge with a roundtable. So what we found with our roundtables was once there were no walls on the room, lots of people wanted to come. Lots of people wanted to be in the experience of listening to expert attendees discuss topics that were key with one another. That was great. But the hard part was you got a lot of people in the room and only a few people were willing to talk. Sifting those people out was very challenging. The best ones, it happened really well. Let me tell you what I think is the most important thing about this. When we think about a successful meeting of any kind, we need to be aware of the fact that the meeting is successful long before the moment when people join together in a synchronized experience. And the meeting's success also extends well beyond that into the future. So I recommend that you use interactive tools to gather information before this kind of a roundtable. Discover what people need to know so that you can bring those topics up. You can elicit that conversation. Discover what people are proud of, what they feel like they can talk about, because you'll be able to link these things together to create that dynamic conversation that makes people feel like they've had a successful trip to Soul Train. Don't forget the poll. If you haven't had a chance to do it yet, I hope you will, because I'm going to bring it up in a second. This one is particularly intriguing. Some of you all may have heard of the television show Family Feud. I suspect that everybody in the United States has heard of it. It may have been internationalized as well. The idea behind Family Feud was that we gather people's answers to a given question, And then we compare those people. So those were contestants on the show. We compare those people's answers to a generalized set of answers to the same question. So in other words, you might ask, what is people's favorite food to eat on Friday? You then have a contestant who decides what they think the most common answer from a general survey will have been to that. And Corinne says pizza. Okay, that's a great answer. We would then show up on the screen. I'm old, so it was Richard Dawkins who is the host. Richard Dawkins would say, survey says, and then we would see where pizza was in the list. Now, I have asked you to fill out a survey, right? So I've asked you to tell me whether or not you have felt more productive. We've got 10 responses. Now, I see here that 4 out of 10 of you say that your productivity has stayed the same. 2 out of 10 of you are much more productive. 3 out of 10 of you are somewhat more productive. And 1 of you is much less productive. And now, if I may do my best, Richard Dawson, survey says, how did this show, right? So when Gartner did this, we did this exact, forgive me, I'm going to take a moment and go back to slideshow. Very good. Gartner did this. We got this even distribution. Now, I use this meeting type to tell people a story about how they compare to the rest of the world or to a particular population. Family Feud is really cool this way, right? So Corinne has just revealed, because she is brave, Corinne has revealed that she likes to have a pizza on a Friday night. If I had data like that, I would say, well, now how does this compare? But the data that I do have shows that you all, in general, had a sense of greater productivity over the last 2 years than the general population did. And when I did this kind of work internally, or when I did this kind of work with IT attendees, I found very similar things. I ran a town hall meeting as part of Symposium last year where I did 3 questions like these. I compared the people in the audience to the people in our survey. And that allowed me to talk to the people in the audience and help them understand that as a sample, they displayed and experienced different things from the population at large. This is a really great way to give people insight and understanding. Now, the 7th type of television show is basically an Ask Me Anything. Ask Me Anything is pretty much a Reddit concept and as a specific notion, but they've been around forever. I think that Ask Me Anythings go back to the very earliest days of the internet. If I remember correctly, America Online had them in its proprietary version of an internet. And I think they may have even been present on Usenet. Certainly they were on IRC, Internet Relay Chat. How old am I? Richard Dawkins, Internet Relay Chat. Old. That's how old I am. Okay. And Ask Me Anything, we used a lot as part of our experiences at Symposium. A big change came for the Ask Me Anythings for us. It was, you've got an ICQ nickname, Graham Cairns. You are the man. I had an ICQ nickname as well so that I could play Age of Empires. Now, here's the thing. Ask Me Anything's really humanized the presenter. And when you take them virtual, something that's interesting is they become more of a spectator sport. So when we used to do them in person at Symposium, we had very small rooms. So I thought that what was going to happen when we went virtual was that we could have as many Ask the Expert sessions as we could ever dream, because we could have as many rooms as we ever wanted to have. But I found out that we had to have staff in every room. Makes perfect sense, right? Dave's here. He's making sure that I don't suddenly mute myself by accident. So he can't have umpty zillion breakout rooms. What I found out was we couldn't do as many because we had to have staff in every room. Whereas we used to just be able to throw the analyst in a room and let the people ask them questions till they got tired of it or they ran out of time. But things were different now. So we had to reframe it, re-understand it. We realized that this was really more of a spectator sport now, where a few people would advance to the front, feed the animal at the zoo, and everybody could watch. So a few people could ask questions, but everybody wanted that experience of dynamism. They wanted to be able to gather all those questions together, and they wanted to see people respond to them live. So if you're a screenshotter, here are your 7 shows in one list, except don't screenshot them yet, because I've got one more show that our parents wouldn't recognize. I think it's really important for us to understand this. It's something very contemporary that I find very compelling. I wasn't able to present them as part of Symposium, and so I've separated it out. It's something that I'm doing more often in very small arrangements. So very small meetings with clients, very small meetings of other kinds. It's actually the Twitch stream of Ninja playing Fortnite. So people participating in an endeavor are inherently very interesting. And when they are participating in an endeavor that we sympathize with, or that we're curious about, or that we want to understand better, they're super interesting. So I experienced this. My son is 21. He's in college. And when he was in high school, I found that one of the ways that we could connect was that I could sit with him while he played video games and ask him about the experience that he was having. Amazing race. Valerie is perfect, because what you're doing in that situation is you're able to ask questions as people are going. So Twitch streams are awesome because you say, why did you make that choice? Why did you play that way? Why did you choose this character? Why did you go that direction? And I would say to my son, tell me what I'm watching. Tell me what I'm seeing. Tell me what's happening in the game. Tell me how you're choosing these things. I was curious, right? I'm a digital guy. I loved Minecraft. My son and I are still playing Minecraft together. It's been 10 years. We still play Magic the Gathering together. I have a spiffy little deck box, right? So games are really the place that we meet. But what was exciting about it was that you got to learn from people while they were doing it. Now, I use this for data visualization. So I'll talk to a client and I'll visualize data with them while I'm talking. I recommend people use it for critical capabilities. It's a note type where you get to customize your results. I think it's really important for us to think about that. So now you can screenshot this. By the way, I will provide, of course, Dave, with a link to this presentation on Google Docs as a Google slide set. So you are welcome to see it, have it. It is not Gartner's intellectual property. It's mine. I work at Gartner, but except for probably the non-compete, which is probably terrifying, it's not theirs. These are the things I recommend you think about. Ask yourself, before you pick your show, what are you trying to accomplish? You need to know who your target audience is going to be in order to understand whether they're going to dial in. I'm going to make some guesses here. Graham is probably going to be willing to join your Twitch stream. Corinne, I don't know anything about, but if you bring pizza for her and have it in the room, especially if it's a Friday, you'll be set up. Valerie might be interested in the Twitch stream for a different topic. Be aware that your audience varies and think about the personas that they have, and ask yourself then how you'll measure your success. Have the telemetry in place when you develop your TV show so you will know how it performs. Not every measurement is created equal. Not everything is the same. And you want to link your telemetry, your measurements, and your metrics to the nature of the show and the nature of the audience.